Well, welcome everyone to the virtual world of the East Side Freedom Library and what will certainly prove to be a very special evening. I'm Peter Ratcliffe, the recently stepped down co-executive director at the library. We have a new executive director, Sangmini Labut, who couldn't be with us tonight. My colleague Clarence White is handling the technology. This is a particularly exciting program because we're going to reach adults, we're going to reach kids, we're going to reach everybody who ought to be interested in what can we do to breathe more life into the use of Indigenous languages, whether it is Dakota or Lakota or Anishinaabe or Ojibwe or Cherokee. And we have our very special friends with us this evening, Shari, Aronson, and Chris Griffith of Z Puppets Rosenschnoz. Maybe somewhere on this planet, Rosenschnoz is an Indigenous person. We've yet to do that research and find out. But I absolutely adore what Shari and Chris do, embodying puppets, becoming puppets, bringing puppets to life, and using that as a way to educate and inspire. So they have brought along two friends of theirs this evening, and they will be introducing them. And the plan is to have some conversation about issues of Indigenous language, to look at some video of their work, and then to field some questions from folks in the audience. We want to invite you to use the chat, and Clarence and I will be tracking questions in the chat to pass along to our panelists. So let me turn things over to Shari and Chris, or I guess particularly to Chris, who's going to introduce his colleagues this evening and frame the work that we're going to witness.
Thank you, Peter. Wado. Osio Nichichari, Chris Griffith, Dawado, Galielik, Chichilag Chigi. Hello, everybody. My name is Chris Griffith, and I'm very grateful to be Cherokee. I'm a member of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma. And before we get started, or as we get started, we just want to acknowledge that we, Shari and I, and Z Puppets, and also East Side Freedom Library, we live and we work in Minnesota, the traditional land of the Dakota people. And we honor with gratitude both the land itself and the people who have stewarded the land throughout generations, including the Ojibwe and other indigenous nations as well. In giving this acknowledgement, we're also affirming the tribal sovereignty that exists between nations. And this is still and always will be Indigenous land. As tribal people, we are still here. We're sharing our talents and gifts to be celebrated and uplifted. Wado. I'm Chris Griffith. This is my partner and wife, Shari Aronson. We are Z Puppets Rosenschnoz here in Minneapolis, but we travel all over the country. And for over 20 years, we have been creating original performances that combine puppetry and humor and music, and working with children and youth. But also we include adults in that, children and youth, because I don't think we ever really grow up. This idea came to the project that we're going to be premiering tonight and that we're going to be talking about a lot is something that's very near and dear to me. It's called Star Turtle, Noxie Doxie. And it's been quite a journey for me to kind of blend together my puppetry life, my career in puppetry and education, together with my Cherokee roots, and trying to figure out a way that I can use my skills and my talents to further the revitalization of the Cherokee language, particularly. But we're also going to be talking about all Indigenous languages, particularly the Indigenous languages that are endangered and that need revitalization, which I think is basically all of them at this point. So we'll talk more in depth about Star Turtle as we go on, but I want to introduce some of our panelists. We have our great friend and camera operator and artist extraordinaire, Gracie Horn. Gracie, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Betty Washday, Gracie Horn, Imachi Apie, Sisi Tawan Wakbetuan Oyate, Naku Hunkpapa Oyate, Miti Oshre, Naku Wakbekute, Naku, Southside, Minneapolis, Edward T. Hello, my name is Gracie Horn. My mother's people were the Sisseton Wapton Nation based out of South Dakota. Her mother was also from Sisseton Wapton, and my great grandmother was from Sioux Valley, Canada. On my father's side, my two generations of my grandmother and my great grandmother were from Standing Rock Nation based out of North Dakota and South Dakota. Currently, I reside in Southside Minneapolis, and I am a multidisciplinary artist and camera crew for Z Puppets and helper extraordinaire and professional goofball for Shari and Chris.
Professional goofball. We're going to have to put that on your resume. Yeah. Wado, thank you, Gracie. And I'm also really excited to have with us my Cherokee language mentor, J.W. Webster. J.W., you want to introduce yourself?
Wow. Wichita, Kansas, no less go. Dan new go our Tansito, no lay. Our Tansita like on this guy. I say, Tali and eat in New York, Dagi, Kaha. No lay, Oxtayan Huske, Cassandra, Judota. No lay. A door to get, huh? It's again, huh? Platito o Salaki Yikawani ski, Cassandra, or Scotch going. A chichige, huh? I say, do you also get Lily again? Hi, my name is J.W. Webster. I currently live in Wichita, Kansas, and I'm from Vian, Oklahoma, is where my family's from. I have two kids, and I'm trying to teach them Cherokee too. And my mom, she couldn't understand the language or speak the language. My dad could understand it, but couldn't speak. And I was raised with my great aunt, which was my grandfather's sister. And that was the language she spoke at home. So saving languages is important to all of us. So Wadon, I'm glad I'm able to be here and to support Z Puppets, and thank you for having me.
All right, Wado, before we get too much further, and we want to kind of set the tone a little bit, did you want to introduce yourself, Shari, also?
Oh, well, I'm the other half of Z Puppets. I'm Shari Aronson, and have been the sidekick to Chris's Turtle. And our mission is to bring the power of playfulness into people's lives. And so to bring that into this discussion, I think we'll give you a little sample of the work that we've been doing with a music video from our first web series, Say It, Sing It, Play It in Cherokee. Take it away, Chris.
What do you say in Cherokee when you're meeting someone new? There's got to be a different way to say how do you do. When you make a friend in Cherokee, do you really want to know? You just smile and you nod and you wave and then you tell them OCO! OCO, 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 OCO. That's what we say in Cherokee when we want to say hello. OCO, 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 OCO. Greetings, salutations, howdy, hi, it's OCO. I called her friend just the other day. I had to think for a minute before I remembered what to say. I knew she would be proud of me if I just let it go. So I stood up straight and tall and then I hollered, O-C-O! O-C-O, 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 O-C-O. That's what we say in Cherokee when we want to say hello. O-C-O, 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 O-C-o. Greetings, salutations, howdy, hi, it's O-C-O. Wesa was a kitty cat, just as smart as he could be. He purred and he mewed and he trilled and he even knew some Cherokee. He greeted me each afternoon when I came into my home. One day he rubbed up against my knee and he called out, O-C-O! O-C-O, 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 O-C-o. That's what we say in Cherokee when we want to say hello. O-C-O, 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 O-C-o. Greetings, salutations, howdy, hi, it's O-C-O. Now I've been around this great big world, I've traveled near and far. I've been inside an airplane, a steamboat, a train, and a car. But everywhere I visit and everywhere I go, they have a different way to say the same word, O-C-O. O-C-O, 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 O-C-o. That's what we say in Cherokee when we want to say hello. O-C-O, O-C-O, O-C-o. Greetings, salutations, howdy, howdy, O-C-o. Hola down in Mexico, and bonjour in Paris. In Hebrew, well, they say shalom, but ni hao in Chinese. In Ojibwe, they say bonjour, yakite, in Navajo. But if you want to speak in Cherokee, you gotta say O-C-O, 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 O-C-o. That's what we say in Cherokee when we want to say hello. O-C-O, O-C-O, O-C-o. Greetings, salutations, howdy, hi, it's O-C-O. O-C-O, 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 O-C-o. That's what we say in Cherokee when we want to say hello. O-C-O, 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 O-C-o. Greetings, salutations, howdy, hi, it's O-C-O. O-C-O, yeah.
Wow, so that gives of you a little bit of a taste or a sample of what we've been up to. We've taken the traditional characters of turtle, doxy, and rabbit, gistu, which are traditional to a lot of different native cultures, but especially to Cherokee. And we've thrown them out into space and moving through time and space on a mission to try to save Grandmother Chalagi, which is kind of the character that I've endowed with the Cherokee language, of being representative of the Cherokee language. So we're going to have a discussion, right, Peter?
Yes. So I'm so struck by the tech of your piece. And one of the things that we've been wrestling with at the Eastside Freedom Library, and I imagine that everyone who's with us this evening has also been wrestling with, is what are the new tools that we have had to learn in the pandemic that we're not going to want to lose if the day ever comes that we're out of the pandemic, that we want to be able to continue to leverage these tools. So did you think before the pandemic that you wanted to do multi-layered kind of work like this. It seems in some ways very far from puppetry as we normally, whatever that is, but normally think about it.
Yeah, so this particular story came about in 2018. I received a grant from the Minnesota State Arts Board to create a live performance that I was originally thinking of as kind of a storytelling performance. And I wanted to try to tell the story of some of my family's history and my family's story. And a bunch of things happened that year as I was trying to wrestle with what the shape this show was going to be. But one of the most bizarre things for me was that instead of stories, what really wanted to come out of my creative brain were songs. And I have to say, I don't consider myself a singer or really a musician because I know a lot of professional musicians and singers, and I cannot do what they do. But I had to just listen. OCO was one of the first songs that kind of popped out of my head, and it popped out almost fully formed. And I was more surprised than anybody about that. And so I just kind of followed that creative impulse, and it led to a whole series of songs. Also coinciding with that, there are 3 federally recognized Cherokee tribes, 2 in Oklahoma and 1 in North Carolina. All 3 of them, during that same time I was developing this show, they all 3 declared a state of emergency for the language. And that really, I think for a long time, I had this idea that I wanted to use puppetry and music to help with language revitalization. But I always felt like I needed to know more. I needed to have a stronger base, a more solid base of Cherokee language before I could really do that. And once the state of emergency was declared, I sort of realized it was kind of a wake-up moment where I realized we don't have that luxury anymore of waiting. We have to act. And even there was one Cherokee elder told me that when you're talking about an endangered language, every small step is a step in the right direction. And so that kind of set in my head the idea of a turtle, right? Turtles have the reputation of being slow. They're not, but they have a reputation of being slow and taking one step
slow
at a time.
But steady.
Exactly, right. That wins the race. So that's kind of where these characters came from and where this show came from. I actually did this first as a live performance right before COVID happened. December 2019 was the first time we performed this show live with Shari as the rabbit G-Stu and me as the turtle Doxy. And then that went over so well, I started kind of fantasizing about wouldn't it be great to turn this into a web series. And we started thinking about that and talking about that.
And because there isn't a big Cherokee population here in Minnesota, we knew from the beginning that video would be a way of reaching people across the world who are interested in learning Cherokee, and there are Cherokee people all across the world, and not everyone has access to the language learning that's in the Cherokee population centers in Oklahoma and in North Carolina. And so when you talk about technological tools that will keep going on, I think that's a huge bonus for language learners. And it's how Chris has been working with JW is through these virtual sessions. And JW has been really working with people all over in addition to the classes he's teaching. So I'm curious, JW, if you want to talk about how you've been using these technological tools to fulfill your mission of increasing Cherokee speakers and learners.
Well, at first I was really hesitant to use any type of technology. Like I said, I was raised with my great aunt, so I I'm kind of old school, John Disco, how they say. So, but when I learned enough to use it and work with it as a teaching tool, I was shocked at how many people you can reach via, you know, Zoom and Google Meet and all the various platforms. And on the flip side of that, that gives speakers more access to more people too. Those that have handicaps, things like that, can't leave home, can't go to university or community classes to teach. They could stay in the comfort of their own home and teach lots of people. And that's one bonus to teaching long distance that I hope we never lose, because it really is invaluable.
And I wonder, Gracie, would you say a bit about what's going on within the Dakota community about revitalizing language, and what are what exciting tools are people using?
Yeah, I really liked your question, because I was just like, oh yeah, like the pandemic is going to end, and what are we going to learn from this? And I think as a working mother that would have to take all my kids and go to St. Paul 20 minutes and then back to wherever my meeting's at, it was like 40 minutes there and back just for a meeting. And I think now I really do hope that we see that we can really solve issues or dilemmas, or just have meetings or having classes without having to leave the home, because I feel like the whole point is to foster the next generation, and that next generation are at times our children. Well, like the way our way of life of thinking is that it's our children are the next generation.
Right.
And so when you're putting so much stress on parents or grandparents or aunts, uncles, or a family member just to go somewhere, it's so much easier just to do it from home. Like right now, my family just came in the door. I have groceries on the table, but I'm still able to participate with you. I'm still able to do those things. I hope that from this, even though there was, it's kind of like a bittersweet mix with what happened to the pandemic, because the pandemic did take a lot of our language speakers. A lot of our elders are human libraries, and a lot of the elders that I grew up with that I was still learning from had passed away from COVID, before vaccinations, before anything else, booster shots, what have you. Even knowing what to do, they didn't know on the res. So for me, it's like, yes, I hope that we can continue this and using technology. I kind of was the same thing, kind of was like on the same thought process as JW when it comes to technology, because what I was raised with is like completely different. And I think now that I'm a parent and I have that agency to decide how I'm going to teach my children, my family, my nieces and my nephews is going to be different. For us, it was that we weren't supposed to write songs down, that we were supposed to listen to them orally, that it had ceremonies, anything, it had to be by muscle memory. And language was the same exact thing. Like we had to learn language by not writing it down. It was phonetical before, and then in 1950, the Dakota language morphed into now a written language. And I have relatives that teach it, like my cousin Joe Bendixson, who goes by Shishoka Duta at University of Minnesota. So there have been really good steps towards that using technology, and it took me a long time to kind of accept technology, because I was taught old school. I learned all the songs that I know in my language were from years of dedication, of attending, of memorizing, knowing the tune and everything. It was like, it was really difficult when you're not fluent in a language and you learn a whole song in your own language. It's like, it's kind of a flex. So for me, it was like hard to know that there were songs that were recorded that I could just listen to. And now I'm like, well, why not? You know, why can't we use it? Why can't we listen to it, because I come from, I'm a different type of learner, and I've accepted that now after, K through 12, that I learn by listening to other people. I can mimic what you're saying. That's how I can get it, and it will stay there. If it's by quizzes, if it's by flashcards, I can't do it. Like, I can, but it will take a lot more like brain muscle, which sometimes I don't really have to do it. But it's meaningful when it's like somebody that's teaching me something. I'm never going to forget it, just like every other art form. I think with like technology, when the pandemic hit, there, just like JW and other Cherokee language instructors, it was kind of like a fire was started and a fire was stoked. They were doing like family Dakota, just like JW's an instructor. There was instructors in my community and on my res. My res is about 4 hours northwest from the Twin Cities. I'm a part of the Dakota diaspora, so my reservation is outside of our ancestral homelands. So I would listen to instructors from my res that were teaching, and it would be like family of all ages, and then there was more advanced ones, and I thought that was really cool. And so I think that it's kind of like a blessing and a curse. It came from a curse, and that now it's been really helping our people. And I guess I'm like really happy about that. I feel like there was the story that my uncle told me recently, and the story pretty much is the end of it. I won't go into the whole story, but the ending of it was that it's a prophecy that our people will no longer be orphans. And I feel like my mother's generation and her mother's generation and her mother's generation before that were all orphans to our way of life and to our language. And now we're coming to this point where we are now have those connections. And no matter what, like if you were in the foster care system, if you were an adoptee, there still is this connection to our way of life. Whereas it was a lot of the work from the older generations that kept that fire going for us. And now it's there. And so I'm really happy for that. I'm very happy for that. So yeah, I feel like technology has changed. I feel like it's helped us in a lot of different ways. And I'm very excited to see what happens, especially for Chris's project. I feel like that's been so inspiring to see what he's been doing and kind of where it's gone with him. And so I think there's going to be more.
Well, and actually, Gracie was our camera operator last year and again this year. And at the end of last year, after we did the first shoot, she said, "Is there a way we could do this for the Dakota language?" And so we wrote a grant together, and we're starting to interview Dakota elders to see if we can also do a puppetry web series for the Dakota language also. So we got plans. We've got lots of plans. And Gracie,
Yeah.
when you were talking about mimicking and the importance of mimicking in the Dakota, that reminded me of JW told me recently. Do you want to share, JW, that I can't remember now, the linguist that has the theory about mimicking, you know what I'm referring to, about the importance of learning a new language and trying to mimic the tone and the sound.
That was Dr. Stephen Krashen. He was he's one of the world's leading linguists with a specialty in second language acquisition. And so when I, like Gracie, I was extremely hesitant with technology, because we were taught by our elders to not trust that. Right. To trust the people and trust, let that information go directly to spirit and not electronics, So we are extremely hesitant in that way. But when I started really trying to understand and bridge the gap between how I was raised and how it wasn't wrong, but we've got to do something to keep it alive because it's no longer working. It's not working anymore. So I started to do a lot of research, and when I came across Dr. Krashen's book, he said, when it comes to learning a second language, a lot of times, especially the generation of like me and Gracie's parents, you know, there was a lot of, you know, shaming done by people that, you know, were trying to learn a language. Oh, you're not saying it right. Oh, you're not doing it right. And it killed all morale and all want to be, you know, learn, you know, traditional language and culture. But Dr. Krashen said that in order to truly acquire a language, you have to believe that you belong to it. If you don't believe you belong to it, it'll never become a natural part of you. So there's a lot of cross-generational pain in language learning too that we're trying to get through. And with the advancement of technology as well, you know, with apps and computer programs and all kinds of things, we're able to, like, you know, our Cherokee people have been one of the first tribes to have a written language. But even though we can write our language, just like with Gracie, we were expected to not share that in writing. It was to be shared and propagated amongst ourselves at ceremonial grounds. And that helped strengthen the belief system behind it, because without our language, I mean, it's an extremely difficult thing to explain how when you speak like Cherokee, Navajo, Wyandotte, Seneca, it's a different way of thinking, a different way of communicating to the world around you. It's nothing like English. So the thing I find the most exciting about what Shari and Chris is doing is it takes all that pain and all that struggle and just throws it in the trash, because they start out with fun. And when you're able to mimic something that you're not worried about pain and struggle and cross-generational agony. All you're worried about is having fun and watching, you know, two grown-ups that are acting 12 years old, and it just seems normal and fun. And you just want to participate in it. And that is so infectious that, you know, kids pick it up immediately.
Well, thank you,
great,
Jacob.
Great point. Yeah.
It's one of the most exciting things about touring the live show and now starting to take the Star Turtle, the new show, out, is having the audience sing along. So they're singing in Cherokee, they're activating the words, they're seeing the syllabary, and they're making the sounds of Cherokee. And that from, you know, we perform in performing arts centers and museums and libraries and even the Minnesota State Fair. And it's very exciting to get those vibrations across the land. And I'm not from a native, I'm not native, I'm Jewish. And what I find interesting, which I didn't really realize before we started working on this project, that at one point Hebrew was an endangered language. And to me, that just says, oh yeah, it seems really daunting to keep a language alive, but Hebrew was endangered and Hebrew is still alive.
Thriving.
What? Yeah. Sure.
Well, when I listen to you, it also makes me think about the third generation of Hmong American kids that come into the East Side Freedom Library and their struggles to communicate with their grandparents and their parents pushing them to learn English and not to hang on to the language that was their communities for generations. And so there are, of course, particularities about the challenges that Indigenous people face because they've been ethnically cleansed and expropriated from their land and disrespected and represented in such horrible ways in the dominant culture. But there are also ways that really every immigrant group that's come to the United States has a similar challenge. That unfortunately most of those have been lost along the way, and people have lost that language knowledge. And so I'm very interested in how applicable this is really to so many communities. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, before we get too much further, I think we would love to be able to show the first episode of the new Star Turtle, which is hot off the press. I literally finished editing it 2 days ago. So there may still be a couple of things here and there, but this is just under 9 minutes long, about 8.5 minutes. It's episode 1 out of at least 5 episodes that we have mapped out. This is the first one that we're done. We've finished, and we're going to be doing the other 4 in early 2023.
And I just want to add that you'll see pretty quickly a different approach to language from the first video we showed, OCO, and that was inspired by having a chance to meet with Ophelia Zepeda, who is from the Tohono O'odham Nation and a language activist and poet. And we had the chance, amazing chance to speak with her, and that influence, you'll see for yourself a different approach to how we get across the language.
So we'll do this video for about 9 minutes. And after that, I know we've got a lot of language learners watching, and I know you have some questions. So we'll open it up for questions, and all of us will do our best to answer them or to continue the discussion. So let me see if I can.
Oh, do we need a drum roll, everyone?
Oh, sure.
Drum roll, everyone.
Drum roll is on your own.
Your own personal drum roll.
All right. Here's the world premiere of Star Turtle.
Oopsie-doxy, oopsie-doxy, how do you Indigenous do? Oopsie-doxy, oopsie-doxy, how do you Indigenous do? Oopsie-doxy, oopsie-doxy, how do you Indigenous do? Oopsie-doxy, oopsie-doxy, how do you Indigenous do?
Oopsie-doxy Star Turtle. Dogsy, Dogsy. It's no good, Grandma. Everything I try ends up a disaster.
Hey, Dogsy, you're up next.
Ready, Dogsy?
You gave it your all, Dogsy.
Hey, geez, Stu, the cookies are almost. Oh. No, not again.
Just the way I like them, Dogsy.
I mean, I don't even know how to swim.
Dogsy can't swim. Dogsy can't swim. Dogsy can't swim.
Who ever heard of a turtle who can't swim? Grandma, I'll never do anything right. I'll never be anything.
Noxy Doxy.
I know. I am Noxy Doxy, Star Turtle. I'm not good at anything, nobody.
So here we are to go ahead. Be patient. You will see. Me, Noxy Doxy. You are Star Turtle. Wherever you go, whatever you do, you will always, always be you. No, no. How about now? No, no. You will always be you. Eagle on the heat gets thirsty. But the halo high, Allen on the neon. Eagle on the heat gets thirsty. Wherever you go, wherever I go, whatever you do, and whatever I see, you will always, always be you. How about now? How about now? No guna, no guna. How about now? How about now? No guna, no guna. You will always, you will always, you will always, you will always, you will always be you. Needle on the heat gets thirsty. I will always, always be me. Noxy Doxy. You're the best, Grandma. You're the best, Noxy Doxy.
Dogsy, Dogsy, what? Star Turtle. Dogsy, Dogsy. Grandmother needs our help. Ready, Dogsy? Now?
No guna, no guna. How about now? How about now? No.
Ready, G-Stu. Now.
Ah. So that is episode 1 of Noxie Doxie's Star Turtle. And like I said, we have plans for at least 5 episodes or more if we can just keep rolling them out. I have no plans to stop unless somebody tells me to. So.
And we just really appreciate the production team that we were able to work with Gracie on the camera and JW with the language and cultural advising, and Callie Melvin as our production assistant,
puppet wrangler and puppet builder,
and Barry Medor on sound, and
Jeannie Wang did a lot of the miniatures and the building of the sets and props.
And Spencer Clover and Noah Gunderson. So we had this little 7-person crew to produce that, and we're really happy to share it with you.
Wonderful. Wonderful. The power of playfulness. Wonderful. Yeah. So do we have some questions out there from our witnesses this evening? No?
Well, I have a question for Gracie, actually. I'm curious, since you were behind the camera and present during our filming and everything, and this is, I think, your first time seeing the full edited thing. I'm curious to know your reaction.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I feel like the first year when we did it the first time, it was pretty amazing, and I felt like that was kind of rejuvenating for me and to really push me along to use art in a way of passing on language. And now, and like doing it the second year and watching it was, of course, we had things planned out more, and we knew kind of like what to do more. And I'm just really thrilled. I think you did a good job with post-production. That was the first time that I heard one of the songs, and it's just continuously, I feel like I'm not Cherokee, but when I was the camera person, I had to be mindful to not like dance along while holding the camera, because I kind of felt like a stage mom. So I was like, every time I would just get all the songs stuck in my head, and I was starting to like know what he was like somewhat talking about with words, and I think that's kind of what was inspirational to me, is because I was just like, you can really just use these songs and teach the language that way, and people will catch on. I feel like that's like the cool thing about this puppet play is, and what we've done is that it's on that level where it's not intimidating, where it's like for children. And I think that's where I kind of came in, because I went to college and I took my language courses and I felt so intimidated. And then now, a couple decades later, I'm doing this production and I'm learning a different language just by singing along and like seeing it and understanding it. I think this is just a better approach because you don't feel intimidated by it. And I think you guys have done just a really good job in that and making it a safe space. I feel like that's that's like the best thing when you come from a people that have been traumatized historically and like currently in this generation. You kind of like want to gravitate towards safer spaces, and I feel like this creates that space of just healing through language. So I'm so happy to see this to see this clip, and I'm excited to see more of because I know that there was like a lot of stuff that we did do, and so I'm kind of like excited to see where that's going to go too.
Yeah.
So Minna has asked how will these be released and be available?
Thank you for asking that.
Yes.
Yes. So we've started a YouTube channel where we've been kind of putting our previous work on.
Our music videos, our Say It, Sing It, Play It in Cherokee music videos and episodes are on there.
Right now, we're taking this kind of on a live tour over the next week or two here in Minnesota, and then we're going to put it up on our YouTube channel, and that's where we're going to be just dropping everything, all the episodes as they come will be put out on our YouTube channel. So it's, if you go to YouTube and search for Z Puppets, I think there may have to be a space between the Z and the puppets, but you'll find it. Yes. And if you have any problems, you can always reach out to me and I'll send you in the right direction.
At zpuppets.org. And yeah, and we have the Hennepin County Libraries has us in 5 different libraries. We did our first one yesterday at Franklin Library, and then throughout the next week we'll do 4 more. And the Mill City Museum is bringing us right to the banks of the Mississippi. And so that is where Star Turtle is launched, but then it'll be available to everyone.
Oh, thank you, Laura. I think you put the link in the chat.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. My colleague Clarence asks, do you find that the language lends itself in a particular way to musical representation? Do you think that there's music in the language itself?
I have my answer. I want to hear your answer.
It's like Chris and I have always been talking about. Cherokee is a tonal language anyway, so it is music. So when you sing Cherokee, it is just so, it just adds a whole nother layer of beauty to what's lying underneath in the words. So when you add, actors and culturally relevant actors, and Chris and Shari have worked really hard on that too, to make sure that it's culturally relevant and that the words mean exactly what they want to convey to the audience, and it makes it magical. It really does.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a rhythm to talking. There's a rhythm while you're pronouncing words, and I think that's cross-cultural. It's a kind of thing that we all share. It's kind of like the foundation, the tree, if you will, of language. And I know that when I was a lot younger, my dad told me that even like our songs is a vibration, and that vibration is healing. And when he told me that, I really did think back to where the jingle dress came from. And that was a gift from Creator to the Anishinaabe people. And that was all sound therapy. And that was during the time of the Spanish flu. And if you don't know the story, I would look it up now. And yeah, that was all sound therapy. And I feel like with language and with these times, like, technology is great and everything, but sometimes there's this aspect of not believing. And I feel like that probably would be my only concern about things, is that there's like this instant gratification, and there's also this point of like sometimes there's not belief, like, oh, I don't believe it until I see an academic paper, or I don't see it, it's not true. Like, did your grandmother talk to an anthropologist, back then? And I think I come from like a museum studies background where that's always the case. You can't write something unless it's you reference it orally and you go through the hoops for that, or there's something an anthropologist or a settler from back then had written about it, then it's true. And I feel like that mentality is passed through our school system, where it's not true unless it's written down. And so that kind of is conflictive for our culture, because it was oral first before written, and that there was a lot of stress that it had to be coming from truth. And so yeah, I feel like with technology and with sound and everything, I feel like we still need to remember that sound is therapy. We need to remember that language is therapy, and we need to remember that we heal through both of those and really truly believe it.
And what I'm really aware of with the music is that with music, we can play with repetition, and we can create earworms that that will stick in your mind. And I apologize for that, but I also don't apologize for it, because you're going to be singing Nigola Nihige says over and over and over again, and pretty soon it's going to stick in there, and you're going to understand it. And that's, I think, how we can. I think that's one way. I think also the thing about language being intimidating. The more I learn about Cherokee and the more I learn about Indigenous languages, they are intimidating. They're very, very difficult. If you've been raised in English, they're very difficult to wrap your head around, and it can be very intimidating. But that's one of my goals, is to try to de-intimidate the language, if that's a word. I'll make that a word. How about that?
Let me ask JW, can you imagine using these videos in a college classroom?
I already have multiple times.
Uh-huh.
I've not used them yet, but I mean, I've had those thoughts multiple times. I'm just waiting for Chris's go ahead on it.
Uh-huh.
Go ahead.
Okay. And I just wanted to add too, the thing about Chris's definite need and desire to make sure that it's fun, but also relevant. What is so beautiful about that is doxy itself. That's what we make our shakers out of, doxy. And the women in our culture guide our very rhythm in life. So an underlying meaning behind this is that it is only through nurturing and love that women teach, and the mutual respect we should all give them, that our cultures can thrive with that.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
It's a wonderful thought. And, one of the things that we've learned at the Eastside Freedom Library is that Indigenous people are not just part of the past and not just part of the present, but if we're going to have a better future, those of us who are not Indigenous need to be listening more to the Indigenous people that we meet. And so JW, that's such a wonderful thought to bring into this, and thank you for that.
Thank Chris. I mean, it's amazing work that him and Shari have done. And I as a language teacher, we owe a lot to you guys, because this really is an amazing outlet to teach Cherokee. So I cannot thank you guys enough.
I appreciate it. And I just want to say, Peter, what you were just bringing up is really touches on something really important to me too, and why I've been kind of compelled to create this, because when I was growing up, if I heard anything about my people, the Cherokee people, it was always in the past, and it was always shrouded in great tragedy. And that has an effect on you. And it's only been recently that I've started realizing, and I've started paying attention to this movement of Indigenous futurism. And it's such a radical thing, I think, for Indigenous people to imagine a future that includes us, and to imagine to create a work of really science fiction in a way. You know, I'm putting these traditional characters out into the future, into space, and say, what could happen? What could this look like in the future? And that's something that I'm really fascinated by, and really I want to explore more how to walk this line between tradition and honoring the past and keeping that, and yet also daring to imagine a future. And
shaping the
future. Right.
Yeah. Well, we're really glad everyone here is here. And
Yes.
I want to thank you for coming and sharing this with us.
Yes, Wado.
Well, and thank you for giving us a reason to come together and think about this and to be inspired.
Well, we also do want to thank the Metropolitan Regional Arts Council and the Irwin Andrew Porter Foundation, who also made it possible, and the Eastside Freedom Library.
Yay!
Great.
And I also want to just say wado to all of my friends out there who are learners of Chalagi, who I see you out there. Thank you for coming and supporting us, and I hope to see you back in hitting the books.
Wonderful. Thank you, Shari and Chris, so much. And thank you, Gracie and JW, for joining us tonight and sharing your knowledge with us. And thank you, everyone, for coming. This is really inspiring. Thank you all. Stay well. And we look forward to chapters 2, 3, 4, and 5 and what will come after that. Thank you all.
Thank you. We'll see you again.
Thank you.